Let's now go for a systematic reproduction process. First, we need to reproduce the environment in which the bug occurs. Second, we need to reproduce the steps required to reproduce the problem. Both of these can be abstracted to input. All your program does is dependent on its input. Therefore, if you can reproduce the input, you can also reproduce the execution. But with that, we already solved the problem. Programs are nothing but mathematical functions. If they have the same input, they will produce the same output, right? Why is there actually a problem of reproducing? That's the difference between theory and practice. In theory, there is no difference. In practice, there is. At least, that's the theory. Indeed, in practice, the concept of what makes input to a program is very variable. We distinguish a number of typical inputs, each coming up with its own issues. We do have static data, user interaction, time of day, or generally time, randomness, that is, randomness on purpose. We have the operating environment. We have schedules, in particular for parallel programs. We have physical influences, and we do have debugging tools. All of these constitute input to the program, and each of these brings up its own issues as it comes to reproducing failures. Let's start with regular static data. In a batch-oriented program, these are the inputs, that is, the files or documents your program processes. Static data is the easiest to reproduce because it can be handled as an individual entity outside of your program. If your program operates on files, all you need to do is to ship the data files. If it works on a database, then it's tables instead. This includes all data that is under the control of the user. If it's under your control, you probably already know it, so you care about the variable stuff. For one thing, these are documents under the user's control, as well as configuration files in which users store their preferences or their settings for the system at hand. Obviously, if you have all the documents and the configuration files your program operates upon, then it's fairly easy to reproduce the exact problem. However, there's a small catch with that. Just a tiny, tiny catch. But this tiny, tiny catch can become a big issue. Let me illustrate this with an example. Here again, we have our remove HTML markup function, and here now comes an input as one could find it in, say, a user's document. We can run the whole thing with this input and very easily reproduce the failure, in this case, the failing assertion.